What is up, everybody? It's your boy Bobby from Bobby's Breakdowns, and today is the last Christmas video and the last video of 2023. We made it to the end of 2023, folks. Thank you all who have joined me on the way, but I will get into what happened in 2023 on my 2023 recap video that will be coming in early 2024. But today, we are going to be recapping and reviewing one of my favorite Christmas movies. I like all these, honestly, but this one is higher than the others. The Santa Claus, starring Tim Allen. I've always loved this movie. It's probably not on the list of many people for top 2 or 3, but it is for me. So with that being said, let's dive right in. We start off at the company Christmas party, and we see the father, Frank, from Everybody Loves Raymond. He's in all 3 of these movies, I believe. He's not in the TV show because unfortunately he passed away. But yes, we see him introducing Scott and another woman who have had a great year, and for some reason their company Christmas party is on Christmas Eve. I don't think any company does that because they know no one would show. But hey, it's a movie, you know, plot holes, whatever. And then eventually Scott gets home. He calls his wife from the car phone. He goes, "Oh, there's so much traffic. There's so much traffic." There's no traffic on the road. He was just late. So he's going to pick up his son Charlie from his ex-wife Laura. Charlie isn't happy with staying with his dad at first, but he eventually comes around to it because of what happens. And he asks his mom to please pick him up early. Scott attempts to make a dinner, but it goes poorly. So he takes Charlie out. They're trying to find a nice place that's open on Christmas Eve. Eventually, they land on a Denny's. Denny's is always open. So they're sitting in the Denny's. They see a bunch of other fathers with their children who tried to cook, and it just did not go well. He's like, "How about 2 glasses of eggnog?" The waitress, Judy, goes, "We're out." He's like, "Okay, I'll have coffee." And then Charlie says, "Chocolate milk?" "We're out." And he goes, "Vanilla milk's fine." And I always remember that scene for some reason, them sitting in the Denny's and the waitress saying, "We're out." I don't know why. It just stands out to me. They come back home from Denny's. Scott is reading him The Night Before Christmas. Eventually, Charlie falls asleep. All is good, it seems. But Charlie wakes up to a noise on the roof. He wakes up Scott, and Scott's like, "You just heard something. Go back to bed." But then Scott hears it. So they go outside. Scott looks up. He sees a guy dressed in a red coat on the roof. And he's like, "Hey, you!" Startles him. He slips, he falls, he slides down, and he falls off the roof. And Scott's like, "Uh-oh." So Scott is like, "All right, I'm just going to check your identification, pal. I'll get you back to whatever mall you're from real soon. Just make sure you're good." So he checks the card. It says, "If something happens to me, put on the coat. The reindeer will know what to do." And he goes, "Reindeer?" He looks on the roof, and they are there. He's like, "Okay." They get in the sleigh, and they take off. They're trying to control it. They're obviously having some problems. They eventually get on the road. They see a UPS driver who's just looking, and he has no idea what's going on. He's confused. That's Benny from Home Improvement. He's one of the main side characters in that show, and he's just like, Scott asks him for directions, and no words are exchanging. Just, and Scott gets into the air with the reindeer, and he just shakes it off. We go to the next scene, and Scott gets down to the first house, and he runs from a dog, but he has the suit on, so of course we know what's coming. Scott gets to a house with no chimney. He's like, "How am I going to get down this one?" A chimney magically opens up. He gets down there. He has an interaction with a little girl. She's like, "You're supposed to drink the milk and cookies." He goes, "I am lactose intolerant." So, of course, that comes back to play later on. And he leaves that house. Eventually, Scott is trying to find Charlie, and he's panicked because they're in the sleigh in the air. And he's like, "Charlie!" And he looks in the back, and there's this adorable puppy licking Charlie's face. Very nice scene. Scott smiles. He goes, "Okay." And he goes, and this is another line I will never forget from this movie, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. And when I wake up, I'm getting a CAT scan." Like I said, another line I will always remember because it's just so infamous. So the reindeer takes Scott and Charlie to the North Pole. They think they're going home. They're like, we meet Bernard, the head elf. He shows Scott around, telling him he's Santa. Scott puts on a tool belt, and goes, nah, puts it back. Obviously, that's a nod to his role on Home Improvement as Tim Taylor, because he was the tool man, Tim Taylor. Bernard then explains the importance of being Santa Claus. He says, you put on the coat, you are now Santa. And Scott's like, what? No, that can't be. He goes, I have a job. So we go back to Scott's home, and it's Christmas morning. He wakes up. Scott thinks he was dreaming, of course. Charlie remembers everything, and he's telling Laura and Neil, his stepfather, about it, and they are a little concerned, of course, because they're like, you went to the North Pole? But of course, they don't believe it, but of course, it did happen. They go to a psychiatrist. They're trying to find out why Charlie is doing this. And yeah, because they think Charlie's just being a little imaginative, and it's a little kid, but still, they're like, this has gone way too far. Scott wakes up one morning and realizes he has a full white beard, and he's gained a little weight because he's transforming into Santa Claus, and he's like, uh-oh, we have a problem. He shows up to a work meeting, not at the North Pole, but his original work, and they are worried about him, of course, because with the weight and the beard, and he's ordering all this crazy food, and they're like, just go get help, man. Just, figure it out. So he goes to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you're healthy. I don't understand. He goes, I shaved this morning, and he has a full beard. He goes, I've gained 50 pounds since last week or something like that. The doctor's like, well, what is your diet? And he goes, milk and cookies. And the doctor's like, well, yeah, okay, cut out the sweets, man. It doesn't matter though. So obviously something else is going on. We go to Charlie's soccer game, and Scott is sitting on the bench. A little girl's eyeing him up. Scott sees that, so he moves to the other side of the bench. The little girl follows. She taps him on the shoulder. He's like, what? She sits on his lap, and she tells him what she wants for Christmas. And then all of a sudden, a line is forming with kids who they want to tell him what they want for Christmas. And Laura and Neil pull up, and they're like, this is weird. So some package delivery people show up to Scott's house, and they were like, we have a package for you. And he goes, okay. It's about 10 boxes of letters from kids. And he's like, no, I don't know what to do with all this. Because he's transforming into Santa. The court eventually grants a restraining order on Scott against Charlie. So Scott cannot see Charlie for the holidays. And it's right around Christmas, so it's unfortunate timing. So Scott just shows up anyway. And Bernard shows up. They disappear with Charlie. Cops get called, and the cops are like, he believes he's Santa, so you gotta look for anyone in a Santa suit. And they're detaining and arresting everyone in a Santa suit, and of course it's not Scott Calvin. Scott goes back to the little girl's house that he saw a year ago. He drinks the milk, and he's like, this milk's a little bad. She goes, you said you were lactose intolerant. And he goes, I did say that, didn't I? Because he was a year ago. And he's like, Merry Christmas. And she goes, Merry Christmas. And he leaves. Scott eventually gets to the town that Neil and Laura live in. And of course, the cops take him in. Then there's a hilarious scene of one of the investigators grilling him. He goes, I know you're Scott Calvin. You know you're Scott Calvin. Let's just admit you're Scott Calvin. What's your name? And he goes, Santa Claus. And he goes through the names in all the different languages, and he's like, all right, Calvin, maybe a few hours in the tank will change your mind. I've always laughed at that scene every year since I've seen it. So some help elves and Charlie eventually break Scott out of prison because Santa's got to deliver the gifts. Scott comes to the house. Charlie is convincing them he's Santa, and eventually Laura and Neil are like, oh my goodness, you are Santa Claus. And Laura, as her Christmas gift to Scott, throws out the restraining order and the custody papers, and she's like, I want you to visit Charlie as much as you possibly can. And it's a nice moment for sure. Then we go to Neil meets Bernard, and Neil's like, this is not real. He's lying to us. He's just convincing us that he's Santa. And Bernard just disappears, and Neil's like, where did he go? And Laura's like, I'll explain later. And then eventually Scott gets away from the cops. Laura's like, he's already gone, sorry guys. And he throws toys out, and it's all the toys they've ever wanted. And they were like, and that's when Neil was like, what? This is, nice scene though. So to end the movie, Charlie is calling out for Santa because he misses him. And eventually Scott comes down, he goes, give me a break. I was in Cleveland. I had to get here real quick. And Scott asks, can I take Charlie for a ride? And she's like, no oceans. And Scott's not really listening. She's like, Scott, no oceans. The movie ends with them flying into the sky. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Like I said, it's one of my favorite Christmas movies. I love it. I watch it every single year. Love Tim Allen. Great movie. Well, I didn't show this yet, but my Merry Christmas sweater. And yeah, I had to get festive for the last one of the year. I enjoy doing this for you guys. I have a lot of fun with these. It's cool. The Santa Claus. 10 out of 10 in my book. I got about 4 pieces of trivia for you guys on this one. In November of 1994, for 1 week, Tim Allen had the #1 movie at the box office, Santa Claus. #1 TV show, Home Improvement, and his book was a #1 seller. That's a weird fact, but I like that. The dancing montage he does at his second Christmas Eve was completely improvised, but the director said, that was really good. I like that. So we kept it in the movie. This is Tim Allen's first lead role, which is kind of crazy when you think about all he's done in acting since. But it's kind of cool. And this was my favorite one because of how it played out. Disney has a no hiring of ex-cons policy. They're strict on that. They made an exception for this movie for Tim Allen to be Santa Claus. And I am glad they did, because this movie would have been much different without Tim Allen. Disney, you made the right call on that one. But yes, that is my review of The Santa Claus. Like I said before, I love this movie, and that is a wrap for Christmas reviews for 2023. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, folks. It was great. Merry Christmas, everybody. By the time this gets out to you, it will be Christmas Eve. So enjoy your celebrations with your family, friends, whatever you may be doing. But with that being said, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. And I'm Bobby from Bobby's Breakdowns, and we will see you in 2024. Later.